You're about to hear something that will feel impossible at first because it isn't loud, it isn't dramatic, it doesn't start with miracles or thunder or prophecy. It starts with a moment you barely remember. 3 weeks ago, an ordinary day. You were tired, distracted, carrying weight no one could see. You did something small, so small you've probably already erased it from your memory. No camera, no applause, no reason to think it mattered at all. But while you moved on with your life, heaven didn't. That single, unnoticed moment echoed across realms that don't care about titles, religion, or performance. It triggered something so rare it has happened only 4 times in all of human history. Not approval, not tolerance, joy, laughter. The kind of divine reaction that rearranges priorities, silences accusations, and mobilizes forces you never knew were watching you this closely. And here, the unsettling part. This message doesn't land on random people. If you're still listening, it's because something in you has stayed pure in a world that tried very hard to make you cold. You may have felt different, misunderstood, even foolish for it. By the end of this video, that confusion is going to make terrifying sense. But I'll be honest with you, if you walk away without engaging, you're choosing to stay invisible. So before this goes any further, let me know you're here. Drop a comment, even a single word. Share this with someone who still believes kindness matters. And hit like, not for the algorithm, but as a signal. Because what comes next only activates when you do. You barely remember it now. If someone asked you to recall the exact moment, the exact second, you would probably struggle. It blended into the noise of an ordinary day, tucked between responsibilities, fatigue, and thoughts you were already carrying. There was no spotlight on it, no dramatic pause, no sense that anything meaningful had just occurred. From your side of reality, it was forgettable. From another side of reality, it was replayed again and again. Not because it was loud, but because it was pure. 3 weeks ago, on a day that felt no different from 100 others, something happened without witnesses, without applause, without even your own awareness of its weight. You were tired then, distracted in the way only someone carrying invisible burdens can be. Your mind was occupied, your heart stretched thin, your attention fragmented by your own concerns. And precisely because of that, what followed carried a power that polished intentions never touch. In that exact unnoticed second, something shifted beyond the physical world. A movement rippled through a dimension you weren't thinking about and weren't trying to reach. It was not triggered by effort or discipline or spiritual performance. It happened because nothing in you was trying to impress. There are moments that go unnoticed on earth because they don't announce themselves, but those are often the moments that carry the greatest weight elsewhere. What feels insignificant here can register as enormous in a higher realm, not because of scale, but because of origin. When an action is born before the mind has time to edit it, before fear can interrupt it, before ego can shape it, it arrives untouched. Those moments are rare. Most people assume messages like this are meant for someone purer, someone more devoted, someone more visibly spiritual. That assumption quietly disqualifies them from recognizing their own impact. The danger isn't that people aren't good enough. It's that they believe goodness must look dramatic to matter. What followed that small, forgotten moment was not a nod of approval or a distant acknowledgement. It was joy. Not symbolic joy, not poetic language, not metaphor wrapped in religious imagination. It was laughter, actual joy expressed in a way that reverberated across dimensions. For 49 seconds, a sound moved through spiritual space that hadn't been heard in centuries. It wasn't thunderous in the way humans imagine power. It was lighter than that, deeper than that, unmistakable in its meaning. Those who observe and serve within those realms were stunned, not because joy is unfamiliar, but because this kind of joy is rare. Satisfaction is common. Approval happens often. Laughter is different. Joy reorders attention. Joy interrupts routines. Joy reshapes priorities. What caused it wasn't perfection. It wasn't obedience executed flawlessly. It was the kind of action that doesn't ask to be seen. When joy appears at that level, it doesn't simply celebrate the act. It highlights something essential about the one who acted. Joy signals authenticity. It signals alignment without effort. Miracles may demonstrate power, but joy reveals relationship. Laughter matters more than spectacle because it doesn't come from obligation. It comes from delight. And delight is not triggered by performance. That's why religion wasn't the source of what happened. There was no ritual attached to it, no preparation, no fasting, no carefully chosen words. You didn't pause to decide whether it was spiritually correct. You didn't calculate the outcome or imagine how it might reflect on you. You simply moved. The act itself was ordinary by most standards, almost invisible, but you were present in it in a way that cannot be rehearsed. Holiness didn't come from the action being labeled sacred. It came from you being unfiltered. Spontaneous kindness is rarer than discipline because discipline can be taught, copied, and displayed. Spontaneity reveals what lives underneath all that. Heaven overlooks most so-called good deeds not because they are bad, but because they are strategic. When kindness is calculated, it carries fingerprints of expectation. Even subtle expectation changes its nature. There is a difference between purity without intention and goodness with strategy. One flows without awareness, the other pauses to assess value. The danger of calculated kindness is that it feels generous while quietly centering the self. What happened 3 weeks ago bypassed that entirely. There was no time for self-reference. That's why it registered the way it did. You don't remember the gesture clearly, and that forgetting is part of its power. No cameras caught it. No one thanked you publicly. No internal voice marked it as important. You helped while carrying your own pain, your own fatigue, your own unanswered questions. The mind usually wants to protect itself in those moments, to conserve energy, to focus inward. Instead, something deeper responded first. Your soul moved before your mind could negotiate. That instinctive generosity is a kind of spiritual fingerprint. It reveals who someone is when no one is watching and nothing is being gained. Expectation has a way of killing power quietly. The moment an outcome is anticipated, the moment validation is desired, the energy shifts. Unseen moments hold a particular kind of holiness because they are uncontaminated. They don't ask for recognition. They don't seek to be recorded. They simply occur and disappear, except they don't fully disappear. They leave an imprint, not on memory, but on essence. Most people never activate anything beyond the surface of their world, even while doing good things. There are, broadly speaking, two kinds of kindness that appear every day. One is visible, intentional, often applauded. The other is quiet, instinctive, almost accidental. It's common to see people who consider themselves religious or morally disciplined walk past opportunities for the second kind while feeling satisfied with the first. The ancient story of the Good Samaritan wasn't meant to praise heroism. It was meant to expose instinct. The one who stopped didn't plan to be compassionate that day. He reacted, and reaction reveals essence more honestly than reflection ever can. Public virtue rarely produces joy beyond human circles. It may inspire, it may instruct, it may even help, but it doesn't surprise. Instinct does. When ego has no time to speak, when identity isn't being managed, when the heart moves faster than the mind, something genuine breaks through. That is what was seen. That is what was felt. That is what caused a response so rare it echoes across history. What you considered small wasn't small. It was precise. It arrived at exactly the right moment, in exactly the right way, from exactly the right place within you. And while you moved on, carrying life forward without pausing to commemorate it, something else lingered on that moment, not to analyze it, but to delight in it. This moment did not stand alone. What happened recently was not a random evaluation or a sudden inspection of your character. It was confirmation, a recognition of patterns that have been forming quietly over years. Heaven does not measure people by isolated flashes of goodness. It watches trajectories. It observes what someone becomes after disappointment, who they remain after betrayal, how they respond when kindness costs more than it rewards. You were tested long before you realized it, not through ceremonies or declarations, but through pressure. Life applied weight in just the right places to see whether you would harden, whether you would protect yourself by becoming sharp, distant, or indifferent. Many do. It's understandable. Pain teaches efficiency. Betrayal teaches caution. Injustice teaches self-preservation. Yet somehow, against logic, your kindness survived contamination. It adapted without mutating. It learned discernment without losing warmth. That survival is what was celebrated. Not that you were never hurt, but that hurt did not get the final say in who you became. There's a cost to staying pure in a world that rewards armor. Every time you choose goodness without guarantees, without protection, without assurance that it will be returned, something in you pays a price. Endurance matters more than intensity because intensity burns bright and fades, while endurance quietly reshapes identity. Anyone can be kind for a moment when conditions are right. Very few remain kind when conditions actively discourage it. That long obedience of the heart is not overlooked. It is studied, it is remembered. Your kindness is not naive. That's the misunderstanding people often project onto you. They assume softness means ignorance, that empathy means weakness, that remaining open means you simply haven't learned how harsh the world is. The truth is the opposite. You learned. You saw enough. You had every reason to close off, to grow cold, to become efficient instead of compassionate. And yet, repeatedly, you chose not to. That makes your kindness undefeated, not untested. Innocence is unawareness. Chosen purity is awareness followed by refusal. You knew what cruelty could do, and you declined to become fluent in it. Staying kind can be lonely. It separates you quietly from rooms where cynicism bonds people together. It makes you feel out of place in conversations that reward sarcasm over sincerity. There were tears you didn't dramatize, disappointments you processed privately, moments where you wondered whether remaining this way was foolish. None of that was ignored. Nothing sincere is wasted. Tears don't vanish, they register. They inform context. They deepen meaning. There is a reason this moment places you in rare company. Across the long arc of history, there have been only a handful of times when joy of that magnitude echoed through higher realms. At creation, when existence itself unfolded in beauty and possibility, there was delight. When a promise was made to Abraham that defied biology and logic, joy broke through impossibility. When humanity found its way back after loss and exile, heaven celebrated return. And now, unexpectedly, quietly, without banners or announcements, you joined that list. Not because your action was cosmic in scale, but because it resonated with the same quality, unforced alignment. Joy recognizes joy. What mattered was not the size of what you did, but the purity of where it came from. That is why scrutiny followed and why it ended in silence. Accusation is the oldest role of darkness. It searches constantly for motive, for ego, for hidden transactions behind apparent goodness. It asks whether kindness was performed for applause, security, spiritual credit, or self-image. In your case, the search came up empty. There was no leverage, no angle, no distortion to exploit. Silence followed, and that silence spoke louder than any defense. When accusation fails, it is not because the standard was lowered, but because it was met without compromise. That failure had consequences. In the spiritual economy, absence of accusation activates protection. It changes what can attach and what cannot. Some attacks that should have worked simply didn't find resonance. Certain cycles broke without explanation. It wasn't luck, and it wasn't immunity from struggle, but it was a shift in legal standing. Darkness cannot hold where there is nothing to grip. What carries no echo of corruption cannot amplify harm. Curses lose momentum when they find no agreement. What is sent out returns multiplied, not because of magic, but because alignment has laws. Recognition does not end in applause. It leads to mobilization. Once confirmation occurred, assignments followed. Movements you may never consciously notice began to align around you. There were moments of protection where timing bent just enough to keep you out of harm. Sudden clarity where confusion had lingered. Emotional restoration that arrived quietly, not erasing pain, but integrating it. Intuition sharpened, not as mysticism, but as precision. You may have felt these shifts as subtle changes in perception, unexplained peace, or insights that arrived before problems fully formed. Nothing dramatic, nothing theatrical. Just help arriving exactly when needed. This also explains something you have felt for as long as you can remember. That sense of being different, not superior, just out of sync with cruelty. Even as a child, certain behaviors disturbed you more than they seemed to bother others. You noticed pain quickly. You were affected by injustice deeply. And instead of being protected for that sensitivity, you were often punished for it, labeled naive, told to toughen up, pressured to adapt. The world tried to condition you to harden, and you resisted, sometimes consciously, often instinctively. You chose authenticity over survival strategies. That choice shaped you more than you realized. What comes next is not sudden reward, but alignment. Over the coming season, things begin to move not because of chance, but because recognition creates acceleration. Long periods of invisible faithfulness start to become visible in practical ways. Work resolves without requiring you to compromise who you are. Relationships reorganize, not all at once, but steadily, drawing you toward people who recognize your frequency rather than exploit it. Resources begin to flow through purpose instead of pressure. Peace replaces background anxiety, not because life becomes easy, but because resistance lessens. You were born now for a reason that has nothing to do with comfort. Timing is strategy. Humanity sits at a tipping point where corruption is loud and kindness is targeted. Darkness does not waste energy attacking what already belongs to it. It targets what resists. That is why pressure felt disproportionate at times. The real battlefield has never been behavior. It has always been essence. Kindness, when it remains uncorrupted, becomes a form of resistance. It reshapes reality quietly by refusing to echo what is broken. Despite how isolated you may have felt, you are not alone. There are others like you, scattered, often separated intentionally by circumstance. Isolation weakens light by convincing it is rare to the point of being irrelevant. Recognition changes that. When alignment begins, connection follows. People like you recognize each other quickly, not through words, but through resonance. When that alignment happens within communities, cities change subtly. Atmospheres shift. Systems soften. And the final truth that emerges from all of this is simple, though it took a lifetime to articulate. You are not occasionally kind. Kindness is not something you visit. It is structural. It is how you are built. That purity was tested, confirmed, and left unchallenged. Much of your life felt misunderstood because people tried to interpret your actions without understanding your foundation. Now the explanation exists, not to inflate you, but to steady you. Responsibility comes without fear when identity is clear. Remaining pure is not passive. It is active power, quietly reorganizing realities wherever it goes. If this stirred something deep inside you, don't ignore it. Silence is how this power fades. The chosen always respond. Comment to claim it. Share this with someone who still believes in unseen goodness, and hit like as your signal. If you leave without engaging, this message wasn't meant to follow you forward.